what was important for us is not to lose sight of our why. And Co-Lab Pantry has always been a project for the vendor and the consumer, just to make it an enjoyable experience.
That was Natasha from Co-Lab Pantry, touching on one of the most important things that she and the other co-founders of the business have stayed true to during their journey so far. Natasha jumped on the show to tell us about Co-Labs and her own whirlwind of a year, which has seen the business develop into something neither she or anyone else saw coming. This is a great story that shows what can be achieved if you have the passion and the right reason to accomplish something. I loved hearing about the business's story so far from Natasha, and I really do hope that you enjoyed the episode as well. It's my pleasure now to welcome on the co-founder of Co-Lab Pantry, Natasha. Tash, how are you doing today?
Good, Chris. How you going? Thanks for having me.
I'm doing great. Thank you very much for coming on. Now, for those who don't know what the Co-Lab Pantry is, maybe give us a quick rundown of what it is, and then we can sort of get into the nitty gritty and, how you find yourself in the business during the middle of a global pandemic.
Sure. So basically, Co-Lab Pantry is an e-commerce store, an online pantry or grocer, stocking some of Melbourne's best restaurants, cafes, bars, and producers. So mostly, metro and regional, and we ship throughout Australia.
Cool. So obviously, starting a business, as I said, in the middle of a global pandemic is normally not the most ideal or conventional way to go about it. So how did it come about? Maybe a little bit on your background and sort of what led you and the others who were involved in it to start Co-Lab now.
Yeah. So it wasn't actually a business that we had. So I'll go back a little bit. So Co-Lab Pantry is made up from myself and I've got two other business partners. So Danielle Lebon and Avan Chady. So the three of us kind of connected semi by mistake. Danielle and I were friends and had worked together previously. And again, a Co-Lab Pantry wasn't something where we said, let's start a business and let's do this and then let's do that. It was an emotional project that came about at the beginning of COVID. So my background is in marketing and events, mostly in hospitality. So I was with a hospitality group in Melbourne for about 2.5 years. And then at the beginning of the pandemic, I got temporarily stood down, as many did. So I was, doing as others did and was just chilling at home, doing some other little bits and pieces, and then, getting my life organized and sharpening all my pencils and everything else. And then, there's only so much of that you could do.
I would say none.
Yeah, well... I got really organized. And then I think that there were just so many different emotions throughout that period where, one night it was like 3 a.m. Danny and I were messaging each other and we just, kind of felt a little bit helpless and wanted to do something. And so Danny's background is in... she's had a few businesses herself as well. And so she's a graphic designer, very talented. And we've worked together previously. So we were like, let's pull up, create an event at the end of this, not knowing how long the pandemic was going to go for, whether it was a month or two, not, the 8 months that it was. And then from that talk at 3 a.m., just texting each other back and forth, we were just bouncing ideas. And then we decided to create a platform because we found that so many restaurants and cafes and bars were pivoting to create products and sell them, but a lot of them didn't have a platform to host these products. And I've got some background in e-commerce, and then Danny said, "Oh, I know someone who can code up the website and make it, cool and do what we need to do." And then that's where Evan came in, who's software engineer, and he's a wizard. And then the three of us were just bouncing ideas back, and it was never meant to be what it is today. We were so grateful for that. But it wasn't, I guess, your mainstream, the standard business plan that you put in place, and then you've got the steps and your action plan. It was just kind of creating something for the hospitality industry that we just wanted to kind of do our bit and fill some time.
There's something that you said there that's really interesting to me, is that these companies, or sorry, not companies, restaurants or businesses or whatever, were kind of caught out, and that it's, obviously business is not as usual right now. So I think it's really interesting that you've come up with an idea where you've gone, okay, everyone seems to be scrambling. Doesn't matter what industry it is, everyone's scrambling during COVID, whether it's fitness or if it's restaurant industry, like they're scrambling, and you're like, we've come up with this idea, which essentially, it seems to me, like, not knowing it as a whole, it seems to me it's like such a good sell to a restaurant. It's like, you want to do this, we also want to do this. You don't have the platform, we have the platform. So like, I would be really interested to know is like maybe what the initial thought was when you were like, all right, let's do this, for like when you sort of like, does that not go off in your head and go like, holy shit, we've stumbled onto something here? Or was it more of a mellow thought than what's in my head right now?
Yes and no. Yes. So the previous company that I was with, we started a bit of a market where we had like a couple of products, and we said, let's grab everything and let's create a market out of it. So I was a part of that project that helped put that online. And then we just noticed that there were so many others that were just selling them on their own website, but they didn't really have the right tools, and it wasn't user friendly in terms of the customer finding the product on their website and checking out, and then handling logistics as well, which is another something else in itself, which we didn't even know about. But the business model that we had in mind initially has changed quite a bit as well. So going back to your question, yes, it did kind of, I think, we were onto something. It was more so providing a solution for these guys, because, they were down to skeleton staff, and they didn't know, or I guess they didn't have the resources to create the platform itself, and then to handle logistics. There was only so many areas that they were servicing. So a lot of them could only service, say 20 kilometers, 20-kilometer radius outside of their zone, because then it just gets too complicated to handle all of that. So that's when we said, okay, let's just handle it all, and let's partner up with a logistics partner, and then they can deal with it. But we have changed the model quite a bit from our initial thought. So initially we thought we would distribute all the stock from the restaurants or the cafes and the bars, but that seemed like it wouldn't be a great fit for the consumer, in that there would be a shipping fee for every single vendor that the customer would purchase from. So we wanted to cut that in half as well. So we wanted this thing that we were creating to be effective for the vendor, for the restaurant, the cafe, the bar, but then also for the consumer, because like ourselves, we're all foodies, and we all love to cross purchase. So we found that we were purchasing or trying to purchase from our favorite restaurants, cafes, and bars, but some of us were living outside of that 20-kilometer radius. So that was one thing that we were trying to tackle, I guess, being able to access
Yeah.
best of the best, but then also only purchasing, limiting that shipping fee. So rather than shopping from 5 of our different vendors, we wanted to do that, but we didn't want to have to pay a shipping fee every single time. So then that's when we said, well, let's just consolidate everything and let's kind of pre-pack it ourselves.
Yeah. There is another thing that you just mentioned that I think is very interesting, is that the business model has changed from what you originally thought it was. How much of that do you think it is because, and I know you said that one of the business partners was involved and had run other businesses, but how much of that do you think it is that you've got 3 people in, as you know, a middle of a pandemic, kind of doing something that's almost new in some ways? The idea that you touched on, the fact that you'd been involved before, but at this scale, it is kind of new, and you just sort of literally each day there's probably a new problem. How important do you think it is for you to have been able to adapt, or for all 3 of you to adapt that business model to continue to sort of let the business grow as it has?
Oh, we're adapting every day. We're still, like, the business model is still changing rapidly. I think, well, going back to that, initially we had one business model, and then we said, look, I don't know if this is going to be a right fit. And since then, I think just for the vendor itself, there's like 3 to 4 different business models, because sure, I think starting, having a business, you want it to benefit yourself, but it needs to benefit the consumer and the vendor as well. And I think what was important for us is not to lose sight of our why. And Co-Lab Pantry has always been a project for the vendor and the consumer, just to make it an enjoyable experience. And I guess there hasn't really been anything like it that's, well, that we really stumbled upon to how we would like to shop as consumers. And then I guess it was really insightful knowing, or being on the other side, so working in a restaurant or working for a restaurant group, and seeing how they respond from an operational side of it as well. So it was good to see both ends and then adapt to that. So as we were growing, ensuring that we were ticking all ends. But Co-Lab Pantries, it's adapting
Each
and
day.
growing. Yeah, it went from 0 to 1,000 within like the space of 2 weeks. So we've had to adapt. If we didn't adapt, we wouldn't be here where we
Yeah.
are today.
No, I think it's, and I know this is going to sound like a very outlandish comparison, but if you think about it, it is almost in a way similar to cabs and Uber. Obviously, we've had taxis, before Uber, taxis were sometimes easy to get to, sometimes not, depending if you're on regional or whatever. And then
Yeah.
Uber comes along and everyone's like, why was this not in before? You can almost look at Co-Lab very similarly, whereas some restaurants had it set up, some did not, some were hard to get to, some weren't, and then if you put it all in here, and it's just like, if you could, especially right now, you can't leave your house. So many people, they've been trying to do so many different things, and a lot of that's cooking. So not everyone's going to have the facilities to go out to, say, restaurants in the city if they're living in regional. So I think from that aspect, making it available on that kind of a platform so easy, where you can go to multiple restaurants, is something that's so beneficial during a time like this, but also is moving forward. I think I think when you come out of this, there's going to be certain things about normal life that will not be normal. And I think online shopping, as we've seen, has just gone absolutely through the roof. And, this is essentially a different form of online shopping. And there's that ease of, I feel like there's just the ease of, people are happy to wait, a week or so for things to get shipped, like, for not having to drive into the city to go to the restaurant. And I think that's, and I'm not sure if, was that something that you sort of thought early days, or was that something that just was completely beyond your imagination?
Not really, to be completely honest. Like I love to cook myself as well. I don't do enough of it, especially not now.
Yeah.
But I
Ironic,
think
isn't it?
it's so ironic. I would love to. But I think that what we did see as well during the lockdown is that there were so many home cooks because a lot of people had more time on their hands and they were cooking with their families. They were experimenting in the kitchen because, they weren't able to go out. And a lot of these restaurants were bottling up, their perfect sauces and their spices and everything else, and just packaging ready-made meals. So then us as the consumer, our expectation has just gone from like here to there, and we don't want that to change. And as from the vendor perspective, we have also helped a lot of vendors develop products because they might want to jump on board, but there are so many similar products. So we're like, look, let's try and create or try and fill a gap in the market so that they can get some more revenue their way as well. So if we feel that the product might not do as well, we want them to benefit from it. And so that's been really exciting as well. And then from the vendor, they've seen the opportunity come their way, and a lot of them are now creating another distribution or production space for themselves to continue creating these products. And some are creating exclusive products for Co-Lab, which is really exciting. But yeah, I think just for the vendors, they've seen this whole other arm to their business that you look at the winter periods usually are the quiet time for vendors. So if they've got a product that can bring in some additional revenue, I think why not? Like, why stop that? And as a consumer, if we've been open to creating, or I guess cooking with such great products, we want that to continue. So I don't think we can't see it stopping. I think it's just going to keep increasing. Yeah.
No, absolutely. And you can sort of look at it the same way that I think the fitness industry is probably looking at it now, where they were forced to, do online classes, which is essentially now an additional arm. As you just mentioned, you're going to have people who, for whatever reason, didn't have access to the gym or didn't want to go to the gym or couldn't. Now they're being exposed to, a lot of fitness classes and, instructors and all that. And essentially you're doing the same thing, obviously very different, but, you're giving these businesses, and this is actually a really good way to sort of segue into my next question, is that, you've approached how do you approach these businesses? Because obviously they're starting to see the benefits, once they're involved. But how does this sort of initial sort of, this is what we do and this is what we'd like to do sort of situation happen?
Yeah. Well, so at the beginning, it was actually quite challenging because we had this concept that hadn't been created. It made sense in our head, but it was I guess a bit of an educational piece to our vendors. So to get that message out there and kind of have people come on board was quite challenging. But we had a list, almost like a hit list, of, who we wanted to target and who we wanted to get on board, some of our favorites, and we just continued to approach them. And I guess as we got one on board, we continued to get another, and then I think it was a kind of word of mouth, and that messaging spread, which was really great. And then we were really fortunate enough to partner with Visit Victoria. So Visit Victoria approached us early on, and we did a campaign with them for the Click for Vic within the pandemic and then lockdown. And once that went live, we had so many contact us just wanting to be on board. But the hospitality industry, we find, is quite, I don't know if it's necessarily cliquey, but it's an industry, and they're strong within themselves, so they all talk. And what was really nice to see is that they weren't, like, many businesses weren't against each other, and they weren't competitive. So they were helping each other. They, as cliche as it sounds, but they were all trying to do their bit to survive, because it was tough. Like, you see how many were struggling, and not just within hospitality, within so many other businesses.
Yeah.
But it's really tough. It was so tough for them. And you had these business owners that hadn't been on the floor in years and had to strip back their staff, and we're working like 20-hour days, like ridiculous hours, just to kind of survive in itself. But yeah, it's nice. Everyone kept just telling each other, saying, hey, look, there's this new platform, Co-Lab Pantry, they do this and they do that. And I think that we wanted it to be easy as well. So we manage all the logistics. We collect from our vendors 3 times a week. And all they need to do is have the goods ready for us to collect. So we work with them. If it didn't work for them, then we just try to make it fit and make it work. It was meant to be easy, even though it was very challenging. But the idea is that it was simple. And I think at that time, that's what a lot of and still now, I guess, that's what a lot of these vendors needed, is someone just to help them out. And that's what we want to do, is just be like, hey, let's help you out and handle that part of it, so you guys can focus on another arm of the business.
Yeah, no, that's obviously, just going ahead and starting a business is something that I think everyone probably has a thought of, but probably not a lot of people do end up going through with it. Is there anything that you could say, recommend, or even advice that you could give to someone who is sort of on the fence, where they've got something they're passionate about and that they think it's a good idea, but aren't they just need that little push to sort of get them to start it?
Yeah. Well, so Co-Lab hasn't been my first business. I had another e-commerce store that I ran for about 4.5, 5 years, which was a lot of fun. I loved that. And I've dabbled in other projects. I always like keeping myself busy. But I think that it's about the why. So you need to, if you're passionate about something, then kind of go with it. Don't overthink it too much. And if it kind of, if it sings well to you, then go with it. Obviously you need to plan it out and think about it, but I've dabbled in probably like 4 other projects prior to Co-Lab, and this one being something that I didn't really plan, without even realizing it. I guess I'm passionate about helping people. And again, I never sat down and said, I'm going to turn this into a business, but somehow that why has been that, our why was that we wanted to help people. That's what we're passionate about doing. And maybe that's why it's worked, with its challenges nonetheless, but that could be it. So I guess that, if anyone is wanting to pursue something they're passionate about, just go for it. I think there's no harm in trialing it out, and I don't think you can fail. Things don't work sometimes, and if they're too hard, that's fine as well. But I think you should just try it, see what you can do, and give it your best shot. I think if you've given it your best shot, then that's all you can really do. And if you come to the end of it and it's too much of this or too much of that, then so be it.
Do you think that those other businesses, maybe the why wasn't looked at more than the how, if that makes sense? And maybe this one, the why was maybe such greater that you essentially are analyzing the business from maybe a different point of view, which in turn has made it more successful.
Yeah, I've never looked at it that way, actually. I think because we've been so, knee deep or head deep, really, in the whole thing, that we haven't really sat back and assessed it like that. But you've just opened something up to myself. But I think so. I think I'll delve into that deeper by myself later. And I think, yeah, maybe because I've always liked to keep busy and, you know, working on little projects and keeping creative myself personally, that yeah, maybe my why wasn't there as opposed to the how. And I think maybe the same for Danny and Avon, perhaps. They've both had other businesses and started other companies, which they're great at. But I guess something that really goes well with us three in just really wanting to help people. And when we are making business decisions, we always go back to our why. So maybe that's
Yeah.
just it.
And it's a
Yeah.
very good why. So I think if that's the why you're going back to, then it's very difficult to make the wrong decision. I do sort of want to touch on some of the other stuff that maybe that CoLab has done, like with the online cooking classes and maybe some of the stuff sort of leading up into Christmas. I know you've got a lot on the go. So maybe touch on first the cooking side of things that you've done with a few different restaurants, and then sort of what this month looks like for a collab.
Yeah. So within lockdown, we did partner with quite a few restaurants to host online cooking classes. So that I guess was something else for both the vendor and the consumer to get excited about. And they've still been going quite well. So we're still doing a few of those. And now we've turned into the physical event space. So we've been doing dine-in sessions. And yeah, so it's basically another time dine-in session for consumers to go out to the restaurant and enjoy, whatever it might be. And now coming into Christmas, we are focusing on Christmas in itself, working with our vendors to get Christmas products out and about. We've got a pop-up at High Point Shopping Centre this coming week, so Thursday to Sunday. And we're preparing for that. We're also working on our regional campaign, which helps celebrate just the regional areas and connecting those regional producers right across the state and getting them throughout Australia. And then we're just working on getting through the end of the year. It's been a big year, and then seeing where next year takes us, I guess.
Yeah, I mean that's sort of one thing I did want to sort of touch on was, it's things have taken off so rapidly. Like, have you had a moment, have all three of you had a moment to sort of sit down, catch a breath, and sort of be like, okay, what are we thinking next year? Or is it like, let's get through this year and then sort of and then do you sit down and focus on the future, or is it sort of like a, just take it one day at a time sort of a mindset?
Yeah, it's a little bit of both because so we're all well, we used to be very organized people and liked a little bit of structure.
Yeah.
But this business has found us to be so reactive because we've had to, an opportunity comes your way and you need to take it, because sometimes the opportunities are there just for a short time. So you can hold these just newness come at you and you need to grab it while you can. So we've had to be reactive, which is unlike us normally. So that's one end of it, but then also we've had to kind of pause in between and say, okay, where are we going? We need to plan ahead, which is what we've had to do throughout, even easing out of lockdown. And then that's when we decided to do these dine-in sessions. But yeah, we've been planning what we want to do next year. It's all still so new. It's hard to forecast because it's a completely new climate. So we're working with what we know and what we can predict. But we're doing a pop-up at Pentridge Open Air Cinema for the summer. So have a Co-Lab Pantry snack bar there. And we're going to be doing some more events as well. And we'll have a few more campaigns that we'll be working with. So we'll see how it goes. But yeah, we just keep planning as much as possible. Try to be as organized as we can, and then react when need be.
Yeah. Have you caught yourself, at at any time during this? Obviously, the pandemic affected people in a completely different way, and I mean, it's completely acceptable to give yourself a moment to sort of go like I at one stage, you were temporarily laid off and you were sharpening pencils, and now you're planning, uh, snack bar for a pop-up cinema in a place that used to be a prison. Like, is there not been a moment where you've just sat there and gone, what just happened?
Every day. It's like we couldn't have planned for this. It's, business is hard. It's so challenging in every way, but it's so fast paced that you almost don't have time to really realize what's going on. And it feels like we're drowning in a good way.
Mm-hmm.
But then you kind of stop and you take a breath and you're like, what is even happening right now?
Yeah.
But yeah, it's been a big year. There's been so much going on, both personally and professionally, and you've just had to kind of keep going. You just kind of tackle through. But I think for all of us, we're very lucky that Avon, Danny, and I work well together.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Avon and I only met throughout this business, but we're very lucky that the three of us get along. We still bicker,
Yeah.
as I
Which is
think people
understandable.
do. Yeah, I mean, we're spending that much time together. We're working like 20-hour days, but yeah, it's very much what is happening and what are we even doing here,
Yeah.
most of the time. But you just keep moving forward. We're getting pulled in so many directions that sometimes you don't even have time to really realize what's happened, which is, I guess, the downfall of it in terms of the business growing so rapidly. So many people have said you need to stop and really appreciate what what has happened, which we try to do. We do
Mm-hmm.
try to stop and appreciate, and we're really grateful for that. But yeah, we've just all of a sudden found ourselves running a company that we hadn't planned for. So we're just working with that.
Yeah, I think it's what's the saying? Like if you've taken on too much water, you drown. Like if you don't have enough water and you're in the desert, you dehydrate, so you just need to find the right amount of water. I
Yeah.
probably just completely butchered that saying, but that's standard. Um,
We're trying to
I,
stay hydrated. Yes.
yeah, just trying to stay
Yeah.
hydrated, the right amount. Um,
Yeah.
I'd be interested to know if you had any reservations early on. I think this sort of a time, which obviously I keep harping on, but I think it's super important for this story is a lot of people are sort of, maybe gun shy and not necessarily, they wouldn't necessarily, take a leap like this. Did you have any reservations early on that sort of, you know, like it's essentially what you've done is it's an absolutely huge task, and I think it's reasonable to have those sort of doubts and reservations in your mind.
Yeah. I'd be lying if I didn't say like probably every day,
Yeah.
because I mean, every day. I think that yeah, it's challenging because um there's a lot involved. Like it's we found ourselves dealing with logistics and a warehouse and cool rooms and temperature controls and making sure everything is
Does
by the
anyone know how
book.
to use
And
these?
yeah, like it would be 10 p.m. and we'd have some kind of breakdown of something and we're like, oh gosh, we need this fixed like ASAP.
Mhm.
And yeah, every day. And you know, even though I was temporarily stood down at the beginning of this, I think it was after 7 or 8 weeks, I actually ended up going back to work, as you know, the first lockdown eased back in June, I think it was. And Danny was working as well. She was working, and Evan, he was actually traveling in Japan and working in Japan. So he had just gotten back, and then, you know, was without a job himself. But then, yeah, so Danny and I were still both working. I was down to like 20 hours a week, and then juggling that and this, that was, you know, full-time work and more, was just crazy. And it was the same for Danny. And then, you know, we got to a stage where we said we need a warehouse and we need to decide what we're doing. And we felt like we were in too deep, that we couldn't back out,
Yeah.
because we had set up all these processes, and I guess we had found a solution for these vendors, and we're like, well, we're in it too deep now, but it was taking over our lives. So we had to make the decision where it's like, okay, it's a really shit time to quit your job. And
Yeah.
I thought, oh my gosh, like, who, can't tell my parents are going to kill me. Like, you know. And yeah, but we just said, like, the trying to balance that lifestyle was killing us, and
Yeah.
it was not possible. So we had to make the decision where we're like, okay, well, we've got this opportunity. It seems like it's doing okay. We might as well give it our all. If we not necessarily fail, but if it doesn't work, then it doesn't work. But right now, this is what's going on. So we decided to, you know, take action, and both Danny and I, you know, resigned in the middle of a pandemic.
Yeah.
And yeah, still to this day, we're like, what have we done? What are we
What was
doing?
what was that day like when you resigned? Because that's really a moment where you, and whether or not you have that thought in your head, when you actually quit that other job, you are
Mm.
fully, you're now pretty much all in.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, and that was just it. We just had to be all in. And I think that it was hard because, I mean, I had been with my previous company for, you know, 2.5 years, and it was hospo as well. You know, I didn't
Mhm.
want to let them down, but I was just open and honest with them and said, look, I can't give you my all right now. So you guys need someone who can give you your all. And they were great. They were so supportive. And yeah, it was just like, all right, shit, I guess we're doing this now.
Yeah.
And there was no like transition. It was just, you know, diving deeper, I guess, just having, you know, a couple more hours in the day to dedicate to Co-Lab. Yeah, so
Well,
was that.
I have a tremendous amount of respect and admiration for people like you and the others who, you know, are prepared to sort of maybe not risk it all, but prepared to, you know, put all your chips in. And um, I just want to thank you very much for coming on and talking about CoLab, and yeah, giving us the background of the company and sort of you know, how it's taken off in a direction that you may not have anticipated, and how you continue to grow. I think it's yeah, it's an incredibly exciting business, and I hope that you continue to take off in a very rapid pace.
Thanks, Chris. Thanks for having me on board. Appreciate it.
No, the pleasure is all mine. All right. Thank you very much and all the best.
Thanks, Chris.